The OCD and Anxiety Podcast by Robert James Coaching. Hello and welcome to the OCD and Anxiety Podcast, where we explore how to have a more positive relationship with anxiety disorders, taking back control so that you can start living the life you choose and not the one chosen by your fears. Hello and welcome to episode 133. Did you know that you can get a free session with me? I imagine that you probably do if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, but if you're new, then you can get a free session with me. To get that, all you need to do is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com, and there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. In today's podcast, we take a look at the question that so often comes up with OCD, and that is, if I don't perform the compulsion, will something bad happen? And this is a question that OCD uses against us to keep us in the trap, to keep us ruminating, to keep us performing the compulsions, because if we don't, then we feel like something terrible or something awful is going to happen. And it's just a lie. This is just the OCD keeping us stuck. So we explore this question today and how you can actually let go of that question moving forward in the future. If you find this podcast helpful, it would be amazing if you could like and follow on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @RobertJamesCoachingUK. And I really hope that you enjoy this episode. If you have any questions, then do please let me know. Many thanks. One of the things that keeps the vicious cycle of OCD going is the kind of underlying threat that we feel that we get from OCD, that if we don't perform the compulsion, something absolutely awful or terrible could happen. And this could be something that happens to yourself, as in contamination OCD, or it could be a harm-related type of OCD where you imagine something horrible will happen to somebody that you know and love, or even just a stranger. Or it could be, searching for certainty about something because not having that certainty is so difficult to tolerate. Many people end up developing bizarre rituals just to avoid something terrible perhaps happening to the people that they care about. People can avoid stepping on cracks in the pavement and things like this. And actually, this is obviously just perpetuating the OCD in the long run. So much of the problems with OCD come from this idea of hyper responsibility. Many of my clients, really struggle with this, where they kind of think that if they have any kind of bad thought whatsoever, then that of course means that they are a terrible person, and that they need to do everything they can to prove that they're not. Or other people really struggle with the concept of magical thinking, as if somehow they have the ability to make terrible things happen with their thoughts alone. And this is something that's really disturbing for many people with OCD, and will cause them to want to perform all sorts of different compulsions in order to minimize their fears about this. But yet again, every time that we perform a compulsion, all we're actually doing is just reinforcing the thing that we're trying to deal with in the first place. The important thing to remember with the question, but if I don't perform the compulsion, what if something terrible happens, is that in the end, it doesn't really matter, which compulsions you're performing and how many times you perform them. You may get some momentary kind of relief from the obsession from performing it, but if you keep doing it, all you're going to do is reinforce it and make it more likely that you're going to need to keep performing those compulsions in the long run. and that you're going to keep struggling with these obsessions, in the future as well. Now, part of the issue here lies in risk. I think it's fair to say that in general, our society today is increasingly risk averse. Now, you could argue that this is a good thing. Of course, we don't want to be leaving our houses and facing undue risk just for the sake of it. We all want to live, hopefully long and healthy lives. However, taking on and accepting that some kind of risk is actually a normal part of life, that we can't completely mitigate all risk. And the problem with doing so is it's demanding certainty from life. Life is inherently uncertain. We literally don't know what's going to happen in the next minute, let alone the next hour, the next day, the next year. And trying to keep on top of that to the point where you're trying to avoid anything bad happening ever is literally a recipe for making yourself miserable and to suffer. Something that I like to remind myself on a fairly regular basis is that uncertainty is the spice of life. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you need to have uncertainty. If life was always predictable, if you always knew exactly what was going to be happening, and you didn't have any risk whatsoever, you would really quite quickly become bored, because we need to have a sense of uncertainty in life. It's literally what makes things interesting. So with that in mind, the way that we answer this question is to give up on looking for certainty. Often the best weapon we have against OCD is literally to do just that. OCD is always demanding certainty from us. And when we say, actually, how about no, I'm not going to search for that certainty anymore. I'm going to just walk away and allow this uncertainty to just be here in the background whilst I get on with other things. Now, probably you're going to make the OCD pretty angry. He's going to be pretty upset. He's going to get annoyed. He's going to come knocking at your door. He's going to be literally screaming and shouting on the street outside, demanding your attention, demanding that you do answer that question, that you do find the certainty. And of course, that if you don't, something very, very, very bad is going to happen. But of course, it's not. And the more that we don't actually perform the compulsion, the more that we just accept the uncertainty and just get back into our life and focus on our values, the better we get at doing that, the more habitual that becomes, and the easier it will be to repeat that in the future. Answer the question with a maybe, a perhaps, and do your best to taunt the OCD, annoy the OCD, try to wind him up on purpose to see if you can get a response, because this is what you want to do. You want to start playing with OCD. You don't want to take it so seriously anymore. You want to kind of start putting it a bit more in its place, because you are the boss, not the OCD. In my experience, this approach works really well. And, on the days where obsessive thoughts still come up occasionally for me, this is something that I like to do and just kind of say maybe to the thoughts. And it's amazing how quickly they disappear again. When you do first start doing this, though, you may notice a bit of a spike in anxiety. But counterintuitively, this is actually a good sign, because it shows that you're standing up to the OCD. You're not just doing the compulsion straight away and therefore getting that slight relief from the anxiety. You're doing the opposite. You're standing up to it. And so temporarily, you may get a small spike. It's a bit like doing an exposure activity, but kind of in vitro. So there we go, guys. I hope that you found that helpful today. It's a question that I think runs through the mind of so many people struggling with OCD. And this approach is the best way that I've found for dealing with it. What we don't want to do is to get into a rumination about this kind of thought, because that's just going to get us more and more stuck. And that's the last thing that we want. So I really hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, then do please let me know. And many thanks. Just a quick reminder that if you want to get a free session, all you need to do to get that is to head over to my website, www.robertjamescoaching.com, and there you can leave me a message and we can arrange the free session. And now just a quick reminder of my disclaimer. Any information that you view on my website, Instagram page, Facebook group, or anywhere else online, or any information that you listen to on the podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for actual medical or mental health advice from a doctor, psychologist, or any other medical or mental health professional.